Good evening, everyone, and thank you for being to this third webinar dedicated tonight to the dispute board functioning during the COVID-19 pandemic. This is our third webinar in a long series that will continue even in September, and you are all invited to follow our webinars that will start again on 9th of September. But for the time being, let me say 2 words tonight in order to present our topic and our speaker. So the dispute board. This webinar is entirely dedicated to the functioning of the dispute board and how the site visits can be carried out during the COVID-19 pandemic. And our association, the European Society of Construction Law, together with the Italian Society of Construction Law, invited Romano Allione, who is a very important engineer and a leader in the DRBF, so the Dispute Resolution Board Foundation, and the wide experience, in particular, of Mr. Allione allows us to have a very deep experience in the functioning of the dispute board. So many thanks to Romano Allione for being with us tonight, and the floor is yours in order to start this important webinar tonight.
Okay, good evening and hello to everybody. I am thankful to Professor Judica and Professor Panetta and to the society to have called me to speak about dispute board in general for a while, and then specifically on what is happening with COVID-19 pandemic, which is at the very beginning. So there is still a lot to be seen and to discuss. But let's hope that we don't have a second stage. Let's go ahead. Now, I will introduce a bit the dispute board. I don't know, I guess most of you are familiar with dispute board, but let me go through fast on the various concepts. And also, let's take a moment about the qualification of dispute board member and their appointment as a standard practice, which has been developed since many years now, so we are very much familiar. The site visit as important, the first site visit, and then dispute operation, the importance of do whatever it is possible to avoid dispute, and later on to resolve dispute and make decision or recommendation depending on the case. If this does not work, as you know, I'm referring mainly to FIDIC conditional contract. You have amicable settlement, and in case of not dissatisfaction, the party may decide to go to arbitration. As far as COVID-19, I will speak a bit of my experience on the impact on the project construction and the effect both on time of completion and additional cost. And I will also speak a bit about the possibly applicable cause. Although I understand that everybody, the first thing to say was force majeure is not the only one, and maybe is not the best one to follow. Anyway, it is important to go through that a bit. Now, let's go back to the old times. A dispute board, which can be called DAB, Dispute Adjudication Board, DAB, which is a new name of FIDIC, Dispute Avoidance and Adjudication Board, DRB, Dispute Resolution Board, and DB in general, is a board of impartial professionals formed at the beginning of the project to follow construction progress, encourage dispute avoidance, and assist in the resolution of dispute for the duration of the project. I'm saying, not me, but this is, of course, I took from previous presentation. Impartial, I hope that everybody understands also independent, with no conflict of interest, and of course, as we see later, knowledgeable about what we are talking now. And the other thing is about the dispute avoidance, which is a la page today, but I tell you was most important even in the 80, 81, in order to avoid dispute if at all possible, and then assist in the resolution. Again, you see the wording here, assist in the resolution, so it's more related to the American style, which is a recommendation in a way. Anyway, now I recall here a couple of phrases from the American Society publication, avoiding and resolving dispute during construction. This is dated 91, but the previous one, which was the technical committee which issued a report in 89, was related, instead of during construction in general, was related to underground construction, because the first project which was where the dispute board was used was really underground, where the necessity of a prompt decision is much even more important than in a standard infrastructure project. The board function is to hear dispute in an informal and communicative atmosphere and to provide recommendation for timely resolution. Experience has shown that the very existence of a DRB fosters a cooperative relationship between the parties and often provide the impetus for settlement of dispute without formally taking them to DRB. I would like this to be true most of the time. This is not the case, but still, certainly, you can see that the day before the dispute board meetings, a site visit, very often a lot of things are being resolved, which of course is also helping in reducing the number of disputes. Going back, in the 70s, in the US, the tunneling industry started discussing ways to reduce the number of problems which impacted on construction, of course. And the first time this dispute board was used was in the Eisenhower Tunnel, a highway tunnel in Denver, Colorado, where the local DOT had constructed the first board, the first one-way tunnel, and it was a total disaster. And therefore, the guy called, an engineer called Al Matthews, suggested to have somebody independent working together with a contractor, the engineer employer, and resolve almost on the spot the problem while they were coming. I know that there are some lawyers around, but I've no doubt that everybody will appreciate that when you drill and blast around in a rather big tunnel, this highway tunnel, so it's rather big, but even in any tunnel, you have to decide after the blast and after removal of the blasted rock, you have to decide what the hell you're doing as far as sustain the excavation and render it safe in order to proceed with further work. And as we all well know, there is always a possibility of discussion and difference of opinion between the geologist of the contractor and the geologist of the employer engineer, and somebody would like to do a lot of support work, and which will take a lot of time, but will play very safe. The other, sometime you got on the other side somebody who prefer to go fast and forget if there is a problem. So you have to strike a reasonable balance, and this, in many cases, has caused a lot of problem and dispute, and almost sometimes also stoppage of the work. So to have somebody independent with a proper competence, which is helping in deciding the system to go ahead, in that case has been very useful. So the second board probably also because of the experience of the first war, went on without problem under the supervision and the help of this member, Al Matthews. Then in Honduras, we, a joint venture got a project in 1980, really, for a double corpus arch dam. And there we ran into, I was the site agent at that time, and we ran into another problem for the very simple, straightforward reason which we face every day, certainly in Italy, in many other places, lack of decision. The contract manager was scared. He did not have the experience, so he was unable to take decision. And the situation, of course, was impacting on the cash flow. And I don't reveal anything to say that as far as the contractor is concerned, the cash flow is one of the most important points to look at and follow closely. And so the problem were coming up, and of course we were brought to the employer, and Al Matthews was supervising the work on behalf, appointed in a way by the World Bank and the Inter-American Development Bank, I mean the financial agency. And he recommended or suggested to the employer why you don't try the dispute board. And so this was the first time in Impregilo and Zubling and Lozinger we have heard about the dispute board, and we decided to go in that direction because the thing could not go on like it was happening. And we were good and lucky, and we got one Italian engineer, one American engineer, and one Colombian engineer. And they formed the board. And I'm not going to tell you story which we had on the first visit, but I tell you that after the first visit, the number of claims was cut down considerably, and a lot of things did happen. And clearly, the dispute board gave a lot of support to the project and to the, in that case, a weak contract manager from the engineer. Anyway, the fact that the dispute board was successful in El Cajon reached, of course, the World Bank and the various international financial agency, and so much that in '95 the World Bank makes the DB mandatory for all work financed by the bank, with project in excess of $50 million, and was recommended for any project between 10 and 50 million. In '95, FIDIC got up and adopted that for the special edition of the, what probably is the Orange Book, which is not published anymore. And but they, instead of talking about the recommendation, they start talking about decision, with some advantages, of course, some disadvantages. In '96, FIDIC issued a supplement to the fourth edition of the '87 Red Book, which is the one where the design is done by the employer, the responsibility by the employer and the engineer, or the engineer for the employer. And this put the option to insert a dispute adjudication board. In '96, Al Matthews and 3 other colleagues put forward the foundation, and I was lucky enough to be a charter member of the foundation since the beginning. And in order to finance the foundation, they issued a dispute board manual, which was published in '96 by McGraw-Hill, and the revenue and the royalty from the book were going to finance the foundation. This is the way it started. In '99, FIDIC issued a new edition of conditional contract, including standing dispute board for the Red Book, that is again for the a project designed by the employer. And then they called for ad hoc dispute adjudication board for the project designed by the contractor, and for the Silver Book, which is a Turkey conditional, the contract for the Turkey project. But this, so the dispute board in this case will be called only when there was a dispute to resolve. And we know what this happened in that case. You run into without willing, you run into a mini arbitration, and it's not very nice. In 2007, the foundation published an updated issue of the dispute board manual. And in 2010, now we are going fast, FIDE issue in agreement with the multilateral development banks issued what is called the Pink Book, which is basically the Red Book modified, particularly in the matter related to treatment of personnel, health and safety, and bribery. Because of course at that time we all had already a lot of problems with bribery. We still have some, of course. In 2017, recently, FIDIC published an updated suite of conditional contract, and all of them have got a standing dispute board. It was easily realized that a lot of problems do come in when in the design phase and in the starting of operation, even for the project which are designed by the contractor, and in both cases, Yellow Book and Silver Book, even the APC, there is always, very often there is a problem interpreting the requirement, in interpreting the ways the requirements are met with by the contractor in this case. So now all of these conditional contract by FIDIC have got dispute avoidance and adjudication book. They came up to the avoidance, which I show you were there since the beginning. In 2019, as was mentioned in this one, FIDIC published the Emerald Book, which is really the same of the Red Book, but for underground works, which also incorporate the dispute adjudication board. Well, the important big change is that is specific for underground, where the employer and the engineer for the employer will have inserted the geological baseline report, which is the base of reference for all the possible claims. We simplify a lot the discussion or the evaluation of claim, and both as far as time and money are concerned. In 2019, recently, the foundation issued an update of the dispute board manual, which is still focused mainly on the American side, that is on recommendation, but of course, as a component which is related to the international part. And of course, there is ethics, there is the canons, and so forth. Now, just few clarification. The dispute review board, as originally foreseen, was issuing and is issuing non-binding recommendation. This is still the US standard, and it works. The party apparently are geared up to that, and they prefer the recommendation. And they know by experience now that in the case they went to a judge, because if there is a dispute there, you normally go to court. Generally, not 100% as far as I know, but certainly generally, the judge will support the recommendation of the dispute board. So I'm sure that this is a good incentive to accept the recommendation, which the advantage of which you have in this case is that a lot of discussion is taking place. So the dispute board will make a recommendation based on really the knowledge of the dispute, the matter under dispute, and having given the possibility to the party to express their points in such a way that they are satisfied that whatever they've been said has been taken into consideration. And of course, here you got the question: are you write the recommendation? When you write 1 page, you write 50 pages, and so forth. But there is no doubt that in order to convince people, you have to put forward a good argument, and based, of course, on the contract and, in certain cases, on the law. Dispute avoidance adjudication board gives binding decision in the interim, But now, in the latest FIDIC, in order to help in avoidance, the condition of content starts speaking about the board having the possibility to give opinion, respond to question, and so forth, which we will speak a bit more later on. In my opinion, is really as part of the standard system. The way you handle it will help in avoiding or mitigating or reducing the dispute. Then there is an interesting animal, which is a combined dispute board called CDB, which is according to the ICC rules, where the party may agree and ask a binding decision to the board, or agree and ask recommendation, which of course are not binding, or as is happening, at least in my experience, I had a few of these cases, you find out that one is asking for decision and the other one say should be a recommendation, or vice versa. And then the board has got the right, according to the ICC rule, to decide whether to issue a decision or a recommendation. And of course, again, you go back to the important thing, which is a cash flow. If the dispute board believes that it is necessary to issue a decision which must be implemented, otherwise a breach of contract really, and this may have an impact on a serious impact on the cash flow, then most probably will decide to issue a decision, although one party may not be happy. Another possibility you have, still according to the ICC rule, is to have a dispute resolution expert, which is generally appointed by ICC with more or less difficulties. And this is issued non-binding recommendation, which again theoretically should be implemented, but can be, of course, can be appealed in the arbitration case. And this one is more likely a big, that is happening at the end, is a big ad hoc case where the party are already fighting the hell out and is really difficult to handle it. I had the big one and I decided to have recording, daily recording of everything, calling a couple of ladies from UK in order to keep all the records and make sure that everybody will check the record and sign for them every day. But this is not really saving any time or any money, really. Now, let's go back for a moment to dispute board member qualification. We need people who understand what they're talking about. So they must have experience on the type of work which is under construction. And here there is a huge story about lawyer or non-lawyer. Of course, if there is only one member, I'm sorry, must be a qualified professional engineer. If it is a tunnel, it should be a geologist, somebody who specializes in that. If instead we are talking about 3 members, which is more common, then of course, very often it's good to have a good construction lawyer. So my experience is that you need not any lawyer, not any engineer. You need people with experience and with a proper approach to the work, which is you are there to help the project to proceed. And you are working as independent in the interest of the project. And so this is already a part of the qualification. You don't need people who is simply negative, trying to find out whatever you can do in order not to do the work, which is happening too often in my life. At least I don't like that at all. And the appointment is a standard appointment. Each party will appoint 1 member, and then the 2 members generally will suggest will suggest a chairman for the approval of the parties. And this normally works because you have already 3 people working together at least to reach that the formation. And not always you know all the people, but certainly if you start talking with people, you can put together somebody who will work as a team. Of course, all the conditional contract will see what will happen if there is no agreement. Of course, you have an appointing entity, which can be FIDIC, can be ICC, or whatever. Let's go fast through the site visit. We give a special importance to the first visit because you must try to bring the parties at the proper level to the real understanding of what is supposed to be the role of the dispute board and how it will operate. And so generally on the first visit, you try to give a big background, because very often, not anymore in the recent year, but in the past, almost all of you had people who had never heard about dispute board. But this has been changing. Now we have thousands of dispute board, so this is much more understood and easier to go ahead. And of course, I keep repeating that all the parties should be working for the project success. The party should understand that it is in interest of everybody. If you work for the project, at the end of the day, both parties will be on the positive side, not always money-wise, but at least relation-wise and so forth. It is foreseen, as you all know, to have regular visit every 3 or 4 months, and to have a certain type of procedure as far as the visit itself, presentation by the engineer, the presentation by the contractor, and then discussion of the different points, visit to the site, all together, dispute board asking question, and so forth. And then procedure for the referral and the dealing with the referral in order to go ahead in the proper time to recommendation or decision, depending on the type of board you have. And the time is fixed. The FIDIC is talking about 84 days. They go by 14, 14, 14. And ICC is talking about 90 days. That don't really make it. And it is possible to do that, to conclude in that time and even less, if you face the problem when they come. You don't wait them to accumulate and the party to reach a fighting attitude, and that will not be helpful to resolve. As I basically spoke a bit about DB operation. Now, the dispute avoidance, a lot of people think, including engineer, not only lawyer, that what you need is a strict procedure, and that will limit, avoid dispute. This is not correct. This may prevent people by time bar, by you have not completed this process in 28 days, therefore your time bar as well. This will lead to a lot of fight, and a lot will go to arbitration just because of that. The way to avoid dispute is to prevent the dispute. And this is where a good engineer and good lawyer can see the problem coming on the technical ground, if you're an engineer, but on the contractual and the legal ground, if you're a lawyer. So there is quite possibility, and you cannot go to them, go to the party and tell them, look, I've been working 40 years in this type of infrastructure. It's very simple. You do like this, you solve the problem. That is totally against is against in solving the problem. And second is against the rule of the proper handling of dispute board. But certainly you can ask questions up to when you have understood, you engineer, you lawyer, and they will answer. And I tell you, a lot of time we hear people speaking for a long time, and on the other side, you can see they don't understand what they're talking about. So one thing is to listen, and one thing is to understand. And very often, somebody does not even listen. So one duty of the dispute board and techniques, simple techniques, which is very simple, straightforward, is to keep asking questions at when you as member or chairman, you are certain you have understood which one is a problem. And in the process, there is an improvement in understanding communication by the parties. The other thing which did happen, a lot of time you find out, you realize that there is something that both the engineer very often and the contractor are not happy to share with everybody on the table. And so you have to force them. And then you find out that maybe the real problem was postponed because they were not fully ready. But again, the sooner you get the problem on the table, the sooner you can face it and understand. And this, a lot is related to transparency. Of course, there is also a matter of safety. Safety, it is a problem for everybody. So when you go around the site, I never say, well, I've done it maybe 1 or 2 times. When you see something absolutely wrong, you stop them. Even if you are not part of the project, you call the right guy and you stop the thing. But certainly you have to call the safety problem and the health problem. And today, of course, much more. And I tell you, in a place where you've got thousands of people working, like the Genoa bridge being finalized now, it is not easy to keep 1 meter distance. Sometimes might be impossible. And so there are a lot of consequences due to the problem with coronavirus. But okay, we'll come to that later on. Another way to avoid dispute is to give opinion or recommendation. Now, very often the dispute board is prepared to give opinion or recommendation based on possibly on a joint document given by the party. You need both parties to be in agreement, otherwise your opinion will be, you have no jurisdiction to give any opinion, to use a bit of legalistic word. And so the people should be convinced that this might be useful and go ahead. And very often, even a verbal opinion is good enough to clarify a point and make sure that can be sorted out as a level of contract engineers, both the contractor and for the employer engineer. So again, understanding of the problem is a key of the matter, in my opinion. Well, just I don't wish to be too boring, so I put in a few photos. You see, this one, what happened to us in Tarbella project, Tunnel 2 collapsed in 1974. And it's a tunnel about 44 feet, about 12, 13 meter diameter. And you see this spaghetti type are the steel ribs, and they are HM 360. Just see the size of the man there as compared to the rest, and you can have an idea of what we had to face at that time. And this is what we found upstream, a collapse of 500,000 cubic meter or 400,000 cubic meter of rock which went into the tunnel, and this contract was demolished, starting with cavitation, going ahead with demolition, mechanical demolition, and so forth. And I tell you, in these cases, you need top people to come out from this. And luckily, we found that when we contracted, the joint venture contract was 18 companies, and the employer was WAPTA, the water manager in Pakistan, and the World Bank was financing and so forth. Now, you need somebody, top people on both sides, and you need a third guy. In this case was the president of Pakistan coming in and say, on the next monsoon season, I need my water. Go ahead and work, and then we sort it out. And the matter was sorted out, doing also additional work. This is El Condem. I could not avoid, I would have been the director there for 3.5 years, and then Mr. Vassallo took over from me and completed. And this is the biggest dam in Central America, 230 meters, and it's still working all right. Then let's move to Africa. KATSE Dam is, again, 180 meters. We will see that in a moment. Is in the Kingdom of Lesotho. And the water is being diverted from there to go to feed, at the end, to feed Johannesburg. Contract condition, feeding for. Construction period 91-98. We had a joint venture with European component and local component. And this was the first time that the dispute resolution board in Africa, which is again is about giving recommendation. A number of the party representatives were totally new to the process. Some initial resistance from the engineer. The engineer would say, well, if you give me the power to mediate, I don't need the dispute board. Well, in that case, we had, in our tender, we put the request to consider the application of the dispute board. And this was accepted by the employer with assistance of this technical advisor. However, they put a condition that before going to the dispute board, you really to decide that you will go ahead to arbitration. And this has got a serious formality in the sense that any joint venture contractor will not go in arbitration without approval of the board. So at that time, we had, before giving a request to the dispute board, we had to really convene the executive board of the joint venture and ask permission agreement to go ahead, but did work. Well, 3 members, and the way we've selected it was very simple and straightforward because the party were keen to have them. And so we wrote on a piece of paper 5 names, both parties, and 3 names were in common, and that was the dispute board. And of course, Al Matthews has been chosen as chairman of that dispute board. Number of visits and so forth, okay, recommendation 7. And then at the end, we had to go to arbitration because some legal problems took place in that area. And so the employer decided to cannot come to any agreement. Well, I tell you, I had the agreement of my board to settle everything, the last few things, for $5 million. And the joint venture received $10 million 5 years later or 4 years later, even going up to the, not only to arbitration, but even to the High Court in London, which confirmed the arbitrator award. So, well, we got double money few years later, but the project was already in good shape. And this is a project, and I tell you, if you go to Lesotho, it's still a beauty, I've been told by the deputy engineer, who's called Andy Griffith, and now he's a president of the DRBF Foundation. Andy was a bit against the DRB, but I think he's changed his mind in the process. Then another dam, the same scheme, Moale, and is a rock-filled dam with an upstream face in concrete. And is an interesting project, and is providing, also with a lot of tunnels, providing water to the KATSE Dam reservoir, again to bring more water to Johannesburg. Even there, they had 7 disputes where the DRB gave recommendation, but I understand by Andy Griffith, and he was the engineer at this site, that there had been nothing referred to arbitration. And this is the project. So you've got the rock fill on the backside, and in front there is a concrete face. And this, of course, is a spillway discharging water. Then I mentioned, for the friend of Africa, I mentioned a few hydro plant in Uganda, road system in Ethiopia, hydro in Maldives, hydro plant in Ethiopia, water sewage plant in Uganda. Frankly, this gives me a lot of, satisfaction in the sense that when you participate to a project where you give water and the sewage system to a couple of towns close to the Sudan border, is for only project, small project, $25 million, then you are really satisfied of what you see happening. And the people, we always forget that how good we live with the current water and sewage system working. But okay, a lot of places still need some help there. Hydro plant in Lebanon and South Africa Republic. So let's see what we can discuss now in this initial period when the pandemic is taking effect. We are hoping that from our country and from several countries, the pandemic is phasing out and will hopefully will not come back. In other places like US and Brazil is still rampant. But still, it is the very beginning of this process, because yes, there has been an impact on the project construction. The dispute board had been prevented to go on site, and so to do something different. And of course, you start discussing what the hell will happen from the work side and from the contract side. So we will mention something about the contractuals. Well, very little to be said. The project has been impacted by delays and stoppage and lack of material, lack of personnel. You cannot import things. There are problems with quarantine. And certainly, in many cases, you have suspension of work. And I mentioned here risk of termination. We've been discussing with a friend of the dispute board member community. There is sometimes you go ahead contractually. It's totally correct to say if I have to stop the work, I have to write and say suspension. After so many days suspension, in many conditional contracts, certainly in 50 conditional contracts, got the right even to give termination. And you have to be very careful, because sometimes this does happen without the willingness of the party, of at least of one party, without even discussion. You have big company with maybe 10 contracts where there is a stoppage of work, where they are not being paid, where there are a lot of different conditions. And so the head office of a big contractor may decide, I abandon this project, I abandon the other project, and so they give the termination. And as we all know, lawyer or non-lawyer, engineer, whenever you have termination, we are really talking about years lost and a lot of money lost and project wasted. We still have projects in Italy which have never been completed, and we have a number of them still. And this might happen. This should not happen. It's terrible. Will be terrible for the project. And of course, there are additional costs. Okay, before we talk about the contractual matter, let's see what you can do as a dispute board, how to proceed. We've been discussing that in the foundation and in many FIDIC issue, a number of webinars where this thing have been discussed. There is no doubt that it is possible to have remote meetings. Remote is certainly better than nothing, so I can tell you what is my feeling, but you can use slides, you can do presentation. People can take today easily, relatively easily, film taken by drones, and of course issue document, submit document for discussion and for review. However, what you are really missing of the face-to-face meeting is that I call it human contact, okay? The direct view of the works. I'm not satisfied up to when I've not seen what is happening in tunnel, grouting gallery, so and so. How is the concrete phase? How is it is kept wet or not? How the work has been operated? Because tell you what the hell is going on the project. And And you can talk even with operator, of course, in the presence of everybody. And of course, in the meeting, well, I shouldn't say that, but we see that. Body language, you can really see when I'm upset. And I should, as dispute board member, I know that I should not show that. But, well, each one of us is done as it's done. So, okay, can be done, is useful, but should be resumed as soon as possible. As soon as Beirut, in this case, I'm talking about Lebanon, as soon as Beirut airport is open and you don't go in and you are put in quarantine, which certainly you don't like. There has been suggestion in our discussion that probably the end result will be a local visit every, say, 6 months, and in between do a couple of remote site visits. As far as the claim referrals, if the referral is done in claim where we have been visiting, so we are familiar with what went on, there is no reason not to go ahead and progress. And it is today possible to have a referral and dispute board in dealing by remote. And particularly, we always have had certain cases where you could work document only, and certainly you can do that even some distance. Okay, you're still missing the body language and presentation and so forth, but maybe it will take a bit more time, but can be done. In fact, I know that some of our senior colleagues as arbitrator have been doing that using specialized platform. So as far as I understand, they're doing it regularly now, and the platform allow the party, even in different locations, each party to have their own room to discussing in private, and the same apply to the arbitrator, even if they're in 3 locations. So as for a lot of things in our life, the COVID have forced the issue, and some of them are for a good purpose. Now, contractual approach. I spoke with a good friend of mine, a top lawyer, and the first thing he said, well, no doubt, force majeure, exceptional events if you use the FIDIC 2019 wording. Wonderful. Well, I recommend that you don't limit yourself, particularly if you are a lawyer, don't limit yourself only to that. You have to see the overall picture. And there is no doubt that in all countries, you receive a lot of decree have been issued, law have been changed, and regulation have been changed, imposing things. And okay, one of the problems you have, you got the extension of time for the contractor. We need extension of time for completion, so you can refer to the clause which talk about programming and so forth. In fact, if you look to clause 8.4 in FIDIC 99 or 8.5 in 2017, even epidemic is listed as one of the cause which will give you extension with the contractor extension of time. And this, of course, must be recognized by the employer and by the engineer. And then you should also look to the insurance you have. Generally, I would not expect the insurances to cover this type of risk. And probably the insurer will say, but this is force majeure anyway, and so forth. However, for instance, in Italy, some clever guy has decided to consider the fact that in a company, people with got coronavirus and got sick, to consider as an accident of work. So get what we call INAIL involved, which is such a crazy thing, because there are a lot of, this I look to the lawyers. If you have type of cases of that, you've got 20 people which are going home for accident in the company, I'm afraid that that you have a penal case to respond to. So are more implications which are, when I wrote this, I was only thinking, let's go and check with a car insurance, the contract or risk insurance, whether there is something to that effect. In the future, is going to be something to that effect. Okay, you will pay a higher premium, but maybe the insurance will cover that. Now, the contract I'm referring to are the FIDI conditional contract, but I have no doubt that this will apply to all conditional contract. Now, they say the first reaction, force majeure, but then you go to Lebanon, and Lebanon has already declared that no force majeure. Okay, the engineer in that case decided was force majeure, but the engineer, of course, if it is a matter of law, the engineer can say what he likes according to the contract, but then, of course, the law will prevail. And in fact, I believe that probably the employee will be better off if accepted it is force majeure, because force majeure in the conditional contract of FIDIC, I don't know in other conditional contract, but generally give the time, but does not give money. So the additional cost will have to be taken by, at least according to the FIDIC conditional contract, in case of force majeure, by the contractor. If you look instead to the extension of time for completion of clause 8.4 or 8.5, depending on the, again, you have got the right to have extension of time, epidemic, but no cost. If instead it is a case where the contractor has been instructed to stop the work by law or by regulation, anyway, imposition by the government, then you go to another clause. FIDIC 99 will be 13.7, which is a change in law and regulation. In that case, there is possibly or probably going to be the condition of the additional cost. And somebody recommended that for each contractor or each employer, in fact, in a different country, should get a report from the legal department of for the studio in the specific country, consider all this matter and review them in the light of the conditional contract, but also in the light of the law. And the answer might be different. And so I cannot tell to anybody what to do, but I tell to everybody, like in any claim consideration, you should review the thing and go through all the facets and the possibility and see which is more proper to apply without stealing money to anybody, but applying the law and applying the contract. Now, I'm coming to the end of my presentation, and I would like to give you some reference. You can go to see the foundation website, drb.org, or the FIDIC website, and you can find a lot of information. And of course, I would recommend that you join the foundation. Some of you are already, of course, members of the foundation. Some of you should join, and there are a lot of information available there. But for instance, you go to FIDIC, you can download the FIDIC guidance for coronavirus COVID-19, give the idea of the consultant engineer organization about how to deal with COVID-19. Shortly, you will get a practice guidance for virtual site visit by the Dispute Resolution Board Foundation. It will be published shortly and will be available to everybody. Then, just going through the web, my friend Jim Perry found that this company, Hogan Lovells, wrote answer to question in relation to coronavirus, key corporate and commercial. If you copy this title and you put it in Google, you get the document immediately. And because we were talking about Lebanon, we got the same thing from this company, from a law firm, COVID-19 and force majeure under Lebanese legislation, which, well, if you're not working in Lebanon, you may say no interest. No, it is interesting because show you how to handle it unless you've done it already on yourself. So it is worth going through that. And now to close with something on the positive side, I would like to show you Panama Canal. Okay, I participated to the tender. Maybe I was wrong there. I participated a couple of years to this project. And this was the rendering of the project before starting. Well, this was a few years ago during construction. This on again, the same Pacific side, and this is Pacific side. I recognize because of the viewpoint, which is, and this is what is today. Small problem. The tender was $3 billion, about a bit more than $3 billion. They cost about $5 billion. And in arbitration, there are $2 billion. So this Panama Canal is a beauty and is a bounty for the Panama Canal Authority, but I tell you, it's a bounty for a number of lawyers. And however, give some satisfaction in seeing that this has been done, and it is operational, properly operational. And I know that my friend, Mr. Dalceggio and Mr. De Paoli are still working there to sort out the latest thing, but the project is running. And the small money matter for the joint venture contracting the work and doing the work. The other thing is that this demonstrates again that the dispute board, which was available in this project, giving recommendation, in fact, did not do, in my opinion, this is my personal opinion, a good work in the sense that it was not accepted by at least one party, if not two parties. So this is other important instruction. You should behave, being independent, being impartial, being like Caesar's wife, certainly, but also make sure that you are able to pass on to the both parties the fact that they should trust you and that you are doing whatever you can for the interest of the project, being fair and reasonable. As fair and reasonable as you can be according to the condition of contract. As the dispute board, we need to repeat that is not a mediation, is somebody who is applying with an independent view and proper qualification, is reviewing the application of the condition of contract and of the law, if the case may be. So I only tell you, please join the foundation or rejoin the foundation if I'm talking to Roberto, okay? I think this is it. So if there is question, I would be pleased to answer. Well,
thank you very much, Romano, for your wide and very interesting presentation. You touched many points tonight from a legal and a technical standpoint, and I will also ask some questions from my standpoint, so from the legal one in a while. But before this, let me ask you a couple of questions coming from Alfonso Pelosi. The first one is dispute review board versus dispute adjudication board. I prefer the DAB, which has, however, jurisdiction to issue opinions and recommendations. DAB gives some protection to the contractor in case the engineer is deprived of his authority by the employer. Which is your experience? In some countries, this could be different in your experience. Have you any experience in this regard?
well, yes, as you can see from my bold white hair, that I went through all of them, and a lot depends on the local culture and on the behavior of the party and the behavior of the dispute board. Of course, whether a recommendation or decision, this is generally imposed by the condition of contract. So unless somebody chooses the combined dispute board, as I mentioned before. And the point is that in the US, the tradition is that one, and as I say, because now there is a lot of decision by the judge really supporting the decision of the dispute board, everybody realized that before going to court, you have to think a lot of times. Incidentally, I'm not mentioning it, but as you know, in the UK, there is the Adjudication Act, where all the cases have to go to an adjudicator who should decide in 28 days. It may be extended up to 10 days more or 20 days, but basically 28 days. And in UK, they talk about rough justice, but very often it is important to have a prompt decision. And sometimes the prompt decision is giving, say, 100. It's better than a decision taking 3-4 years and giving even 300. We had company, there was a famous case, initial case for a Kariba North, and the company went broke. And then they won. So what? The company disappeared. So going back to the question, in Africa and in many places, I've seen working better the decision simply because at the end of the day, the dispute board is taking away the responsibility to sign well, in a way, everybody will justify the dispute board decides that, and we have a commitment, and we have to follow suit. So it is important in many places, and I've seen it working. And I also, it happened to me to be asked to ratify an agreement by the party, which nothing wrong with that. You make, if the party come to a certain agreement, and for some reason they prefer to have the dispute board issuing a decision accordingly, why not? Provide that the dispute board does agree with the decision. So there are pro and contra in both sides. But for instance, we have dispute board here in Italy, and the dispute board in Italy can only give recommendation. You cannot give this, is forbidden to give decision, as far as I know, and as far as I've seen happening. But of course, you could give the recommendation, and in my case, I was with two real good, one geologist and one senior tunnel engineer, and we had done more work on the technical side than on the contractual side. So we issue one recommendation. So I think it is important to make sure that the party are willing to resolve the problem, not to create the problem. And this should be part of the aim of anybody who is working on this, on the project, hopefully. Create problem is very, very simple and straightforward. You just put more rules, and somebody will find out the way to stop here and stop there. When 2017 book, the new one of feeding, was circulated for comments, I objected strongly to 16 pages procedural rule for the dispute board. It is crazy. Again, it was done by somebody who thinks that with any experience, with no experience, with no qualification, you can be nominated, appointed the dispute board, and you can do by following the rules. Does not work like that. So let's see what is happening now. In Italy, we are talking again to reestablish the consultative committee, right? Technical CTE was called by the railway FS and the CTE. Let's see if they restart that. And again, you have to make sure, however, that the people following that are fully qualified and are independent and honest, which is not happening all the time.
Very good. The second question addressed by Alfonso again is to which extent the dispute board, in your view, should comment, criticize the quality of the work and possibly deviations from the technical specifications?
Well, yeah, it is difficult. The problem which Alfonso will have, and anybody who is not in the dispute board setting for a while, you will see something wrong, and the tendency will be for you as a member or chairman to go and say, what the hell have you done? It should not be done like this. No. So you have to change your approach. Not the result, but approach should be changed. The way to do that is to ask questions, and by asking questions and what is happening here and so forth, you come up. And I tell you that people understand sometimes, not always, but most of the time they do understand. So you can have a good benefit, but of course, one should also expect the engineer to do it properly. You can never have any terrible case where the supervision engineer is the same as a contractor. Cannot be. And when it is like that, you can see what is happening. And we have the story close to us here. And so I think even quality-wise, you can help. If you like to hear a story, I was in Panama on a hydro project, and that other project, the diversion was through the dam. So at the bottom of the dam, they foreseen to have a tunnel in the concrete, and to close it with a stop lock at the end. And so you start asking questions. It was absolutely inadequate. But I couldn't say that. I simply asked, what have you done here? What have you done there? How much time will it take to the water to come up? How much time do you have to close down your stop lock and seal them and lock them? You have to consider in your design of the stop lock, 100-meter load or 150-meter load makes an hell of a difference. And well, I was very pleased that the third time they were demolishing and fixing it. So, okay, the dam is built, it's working, so it's all right. Yes, Roberto.
Very good. Further questions from the audience? You have, if you have any question, you can use the chat system in order to address your question, your point of view to our speaker. Mr. Leone, would you think about the attempt foreseen in the Italian simplification decree to introduce or reintroduce the technical consulting board similar to standing DRB? And what do you expect from it in the Italian public works scenario? This is the same question that I would like to ask you. So this is the only one that we ask you. What do you think about the technical consulting board in this very recent decree just enacted by the Italian government?
Well, first of all, I must say that my Italian experience is very limited. Because
but you are Italian, yeah.
Sorry.
So you are Italian, so you know that in my view, recommendations cannot be useful in a contract for works. So perhaps this kind of board cannot be able to provide any decision in a public work. So I'm not sure the technical consulting board as conceived today by the simplification decree is not useful for our public works. So what do you think about this approach?
Well, I've not read what is in the decree, and I don't know, many people have read it, but I've read what was written before. And I've read the objection by ANAC, yeah, and by a number of lawyers and so forth. So we'll never work unless it is more likely the one we've done for the underground of Bologna, which was a difficult job, where we really acted as additional expert, tunneling expert, more than anything else. I mean, the little I know of the Italian style, where you have to put together 10% of the value of the country in order to start claiming, I mean, it's ridiculous. It's just inviting the people to inflate the numbers to move forward, because they need to go and discuss something as soon as possible. So it's really not dispute avoidance. It's a dispute provocation. You're really a nonsense. No, I don't know. I was hoping that they would take, for instance, the Genoa setting, adapt it reasonably. Cannot be that because that will be one-off, and make sure that you put together a few decent people who are honest, can think independently, and can think. So I'm not so, well, okay, I prefer to work abroad, let's put it like that.
Okay, we see. Okay, have you any further questions from the audience?
Maybe the audience that is enough.
Yeah. Okay, so if there is no other question, no further question from the audience, I would like to thank Mr. Alione again for joining us tonight for this comprehensive, very interesting presentation. And again, I would like to invite all of you in September, because we will also cover some points touched by Romano tonight. We will talk about the Emerald Book, as well as the enforcement of DB decisions. And so there is a very wide offer in order to continue talking about construction law topics. So
Roberto, sorry, if I may, because I changed, some time ago, I changed my email address. Let me make it, if somebody would like to ask direct question, please use my address as alioneromano@gmail.com. If you don't mind, so I make a bit of publicity if somebody needs some specific information. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so again, many thanks to all of you, and see you in September. Have a good night.
Okay, see you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you very much. Goodbye to everyone. Goodbye, Romano.
Bye, ciao.
Grazie Romano, un abbraccio, eccellente.
Ciao Mario.
Ciao, ci sentiamo.
Tagliati i capelli, fatti vedere.
Infatti non ho messo la camera perché sono inguardabile.
Ok.
Ciao.
Ciao, arrivederci.
Grazie, arrivederci. Arrivederci. Ciao,
Arrivederci, ciao Andrea.
ciao.
Arrivederci a tutti.
Thanks a lot. Greetings from Bulgaria.
Okay, with a pleasure. Thank you.
Many thanks, Alex. Many thanks.
Hi, Alex. Andrea, ciao.
Ciao Romano, ciao professore.
Ciao.
Saluta i piccolini.
Sono giovani, si stanno divertendo.
Ah, bravo. Ciao Luca.
Ciao a tutti.
Ciao.
Ciao, ci vediamo a settembre.
Ciao,
Ok,
Adriana.
Adriana.
Ciao
Yes,
Adriana.
Adriana.
Ciao
Bye.
Adriana, a settembre, arrivederci.
Ciao.
Ciao.
Ciao Roberto, grazie, ciao.
Grazie a te.